This is Sasha from TinyFeats. I am going to do a video today to show you how to make a pink quiet book cover, TinyFeats quiet book cover. TinyFeats quiet books are unique because they have handles. The covers are actually quite easy to sew. You can choose your activity pages and you can change out the pages at any time using our unique binding system. It's just an elastic strap that comes out on its own. So you can purchase the pattern from me online. It's an instant download printable pattern. Looks just like this and has all the instructions that I'm going to go through with you today. You can also purchase a ready to sew kit, which is actually what I am going to use. I put one together for this video, so I'm going to use that today. I wanted to show you too, with all of my patterns, I include printable pattern pieces. So this is actually the size of the pieces in the pattern. So you can print this off on freezer paper, which is fantastic. You don't have to. You can cut it out and just cut the paper out and then cut the felt out. Or you can use the freezer paper method, which makes it a lot faster, easier, and more accurate. And I will show you the freezer paper method in just a minute. But let's get started, because this is what you came to see. So the first thing I am going to do is pull out all of my pieces here. And I'm going to start with the gray binding piece. To show you the freezer paper method, I've got one printed off. So I printed off the page onto freezer paper. Freezer paper is different. It's kind of like a waxed paper, but it's not. It's actually called freezer paper, and it's the only one that works. Or butcher's paper, I did find works as well too. But you just cut it to size and feed it through your regular inkjet home printer. And if you do that for all of the pattern pages, it'll make your life a lot easier for cutting out. Or you can buy the ready to sew kit, which makes it even easier. So I'm struggling here to make sure that I get everything in the picture. So I've got my iron with the freezer paper. The iron is hot, and then I've just attached the freezer paper to it. It's a great way to use your templates, and you can reuse the freezer paper several times. It just unpeels when you're done with it, and then you can iron it right back on. I've never seen the end of the life of freezer paper, so I think you can do it several times. So once I've got that in place, I am going to punch the holes here, just using a hammer. And you can see my cutting board has been used lots for this. So you position the punch, it's just a leather punch, into the holes and give it a good smack, and the holes pop right out. There we go. All done with that, and then I take my freezer paper off, so it just peels off, and then you can see, hopefully, I've got my holes. Next thing I'm going to do while I have the cutting board and hammer out is I'm going to grab my two front and back cover pieces. They're identical. Punch the holes in them if you haven't already. Mine are already punched in, but same process as with the gray one. And then feed through your grommets. These grommets are two-piece grommets, so there's a front and a back. I always try and put the front one as the pretty one. And then the little tool to pound it in. There you go. There's one and the other. The quiet book itself, everything about a TinyFeats pattern quiet book product is actually quite easy to sew. I've designed it to be fast and simple and fun, and working with felt is awesome. It's so forgiving. It's easy to sew. So even if you're don't have a lot of experience sewing, you can tackle this project. So there's my grommets in place. So there's the back side of them, and then there's a right side to them too. And while I'm out, I'm also going to do, I'm going to put the grommet in here. Punch the hole. On the template, I will show you, I have marked where all the holes go here. So you never have to guess with anything. I'm going to punch this grommet in. I'll also show you, I include with the ready to sew kits a whole package of grommets that have the tool with them too. So you'll have a few extras, but you can make a couple of books then. And that comes with every ready to sew kit. I try and include everything that you will possibly need, with the exception of thread and tools, of course. I'm not going to put a sewing machine in there. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is go back to my cover piece here. So good grommet side out. And let me get this out of the way because this first part is sewing. So take the yellow ring and position it onto the cover, centered but shifted slightly towards the grommet. So you leave a little bit more of a space on the side that is eventually going to attach to the binding. So inside it'll end up looking like that. And now I'm going to sew it. When you sew it, start right here, probably about the 130 position, and just sew down around the bottom up until about the 1030 position here. That extra space in the top gives you the ability to insert the book plate later. It's a little pocket, and I can show you how that works. You can pin it in place if you like, but I've done so many of these, I am not going to. And just a 1/4 inch seam allowance, which is actually the edge of my presser foot. I use the edge of my presser foot as a guide for a lot of what I do. There we go. So you'll end up with a horseshoe-like pattern on the front of the page and then the ring on the back. Let me just trim that thread. And so the next part, I'm going to go back to ironing. Whenever I'm ironing one of my quiet books, I use a towel underneath because it helps to the bumps that are created by the pieces on the underside sometimes make the ironing uneven, so the towel helps to compensate for that. And now I'm going to grab from my ready to sew kit my glitter white disc and my purple heart. I've already got the heat and bond on here. If you're didn't buy a kit, make sure to put the heat and bond on this and the purple heart. Those are the only two pieces on this with heat and bond. So now I'm going to iron this in place over top of that horseshoe pattern that we just made. So center it on the page, make sure you like what it looks like, and you will see the stitching line through a bit, just the indent made from it once you iron, so make sure it's aligned the way you want it. And then iron. I always cover it with parchment paper, otherwise you're going to burn the felt. I use a fair bit of pressure and a lot of heat. And I like to do the purple one right after the white. See, that wasn't enough, so I'm going to do a little bit more. I always test the backing just to make sure. If you've overheated the heat and bond when you're applying it to the back of the fabric during the first step, that I didn't show you in this video, it might not adhere. You might have to try again. There we go. So it's still a little bit sticky because it's hot, but I think that's going to be good. And then I'm going to position this heart. So I do it kind of tilted and off center. It makes it easier to sew and stay aligned. And it also, I think, looks a little bit more exciting when things are at an angle like that. And then I'm just going to iron the purple heart on. There we go. And I always check to make sure it's not quite sticking well, but I think it will once it cools a bit. So we will put that off to the side for right now. And the next thing I'm going to work on is I'm going to move all of this, the binding. So go back to that binding piece. We're going to need to fold it over to make these edges here. So I fold it and then stitch along the fold line. It is a 1 1/4 inch. I find my cutting mat is the best way to do this. So I line it up and then fold it over 1 1/4 inches. Don't get too far or you're going to get into trouble with the holes you just punched. And don't go too short because it'll just make it more difficult for the pages to fit in the book. I like to take an extra minute just to make sure it's all straight because this is the spine of the book. So it holds it together and it also makes it look pretty. So once I've done that side, I'm going to do the other side as well, and then I can sew them both at the same time. It goes a little bit faster. There we go. So once you're finished with the cover, there's lots of different activity pages that you can add to it. You can either buy an activity page from me, or you can sew one yourself. I sell all the patterns for the activity pages, all of the kits, just like that. And then also you can design your own pages. So now I'm going to sew this together, just 1/8 of an inch seam allowance down this side. I don't do 1/4 of an inch seam allowance for this one because it gets you too close to the holes. And then back down the other side, exactly the same. Just trim off the threads and remove the pins. The next thing we're going to do is bang the grommets into the binding here that we just sewed. Let me grab my board back here. These grommets are the little tiny 4mm, I think they call it 3/16 actually. So I put it in. This one just has the one side, so the good side facing out. You can stuff them all in right now and then flip it over and hammer them all in at the same time. It's easier punching the holes first before you've sewn the seams down the side. And this is a little bit finicky, I won't lie, but it's actually not that hard to do. If you're not good with a hammer, watch your fingers because this can hurt. Just about got my finger there again. Okay, there we go. So there's the rivets on the back of the binding strap. And now we are ready to, you know what, let's go back. And we're gonna finish off the cover. First of all, I'll make sure that that heat and bond dried nicely. Yeah, so I can't pick it up with my fingers. We are good. So now I have the heart with the grommet in it, the little heart bead, and pink, pale pink elastic. So thread the bead through the elastic and then both ends of the elastic through the heart. So it's like that. Now we're going to position it on top of the heart here. So because it's attached to, here I'll show you this one, it's attached by the bead. This one can flip around and be fidgeted with. Kids like to fidget. So position it kind of offset, so you're putting the heart kind of in the same position on the purple heart as you did on the pink there. And now what I'm going to do, hold that in place, and I don't know if you can see there, I'm going to stick this in the sewing machine and sew back and forth along hopefully you can see that. Double check your positioning too if you ended up moving it around a lot like I just did. And I just kind of hold it back with my hands and then back and forth across the elastic. I put a little bit of tension on the elastic to make sure that it's not going to be loose and saggy once we're done, and then back and forth several times. There we go. Trim my threads. So inside the book, you'll see the stitch line just like that, but that's going to be covered by the book plate. And then I will trim the ends of my elastic off and singe them with a lighter, but I forgot to grab my lighter. I don't know where it is. I'll do that later. So there's the cover front, all done. Now I'm going to work at bringing it all together. This stuff out of the way here. So I'm going to lay this out on my cutting mat again, just so that I make sure that everything is straight and square. So I line it up. In this case, I've got it lined up with my 10 line here, and I'm going to put the gray one over top and overlap the pink by a ½ inch. Just like that. There we go, and then do the same to the back. make sure you choose the side, the good side of the grommets face up. Here, and do the same. So I'm lining it up and then overlapping by about 1/2 inch. Well, by exactly 1/2 inch. When I go to sew, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and that should, in theory, put the seam right in the middle of the 2 pieces. Okay, so when you're ready to sew, it should look like that. And I'll put this back here now. And back to the sewing machine. So just to sew a straight line all the way down the edge. Get my pins out of the way. Flip it around and go back down the back side. When I'm doing this, I'm just trying to hold it flat against the sewing machine. It helps to keep it from bubbling. There we go. So that is all done. There. Trim threads. And the next thing is going to be the handles. So I've also got a little bit of excess on this gray that I'm going to go afterwards and trim off. But I will finish doing the handles here first. So I just take the ribbon. You can use whatever. I've used hot pink with white polka dots. This one with the cutout hearts in it. Pale pink. There's lots of different cute ones that you can get. And mine kind of change all the time too. So if you're ordering a sewing kit, it might not be this ribbon. It might be something else more fun. Okay. Once those are all threaded through, just take it and match the ends together. Make sure that they're not twisted or turned. And then we're just going to overlap them by about probably a heavy 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch and stitch back and forth. This doesn't have to be really pretty because it's going to be hidden, but I do lots because it's a handle and kids can be tough on things. So now I'm going to take both edges of the handle and place one over top of the other and find my handle piece, put it underneath, and then fold it over. So there's the handle. I'll show you again with the other one in just a second. And then I'm going to stitch along this side right here. Try and make sure that it's centered for right now because sometimes it's tough to pull the ribbon through afterwards. There we go. trim the threads, and then I'll go do the other side. So again, make sure it's flat and centered, overlap 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, and sew. I probably do too many back and forths, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. And then so grab both sides, center it, put one over top of the other to form a handle, and then grab the other handle piece. And there we go. So there we are. The cover itself is complete. Oh, and then the book plate I will show you. You cut it out into the circle. And then, oh, sorry, you probably didn't see me here, but you just tuck it in like that. There you go. So the only other piece that we have left to do is the pink hearts and binding strap elastics. Come out, come out. There we are. So I've got a couple of different versions to show you. So the one I'm going to demonstrate today is the sewn one. It looks like that. So it's just the elastic sewn on. I typically do mine with little pink heart snaps. I can show you how to do that too. Or you can do double cap rivets. My favorite is the pink heart snaps, but you will need a snap plier if you're going to do that. So if you don't have one, just do the sewn one, and I will show you how to make one of those right now. So you take the 6-inch length of elastic and fold it in half with the loop off to the right. Center it on the heart there and stitch back and forth in the middle of the heart. And keep in mind that this is going to be seen on the outside, so keep it in a tidy stitch. There we go. And trim the threads. There you are. There's the pink sewn heart. I will also show you how to do the heart snapped, and the double cap rivet is the same process. So you need your snap plier tool and the awl, the pointy like thing that comes with the snap tools, and then your snaps. So find the center of the heart, poke it with the awl, and don't poke your finger underneath, and then put the little snap, poke the snap through, and push it through. And then again, fold the elastic and pierce it with the end of the snap. So it's the same for a double cap rivet. It's a little bit trickier to do with a double cap rivet because it doesn't have the pointed edge point to it. So once I've got it on, hopefully you can see that there, then put the backing piece on. It gets a little tricky to feed it into the snap pliers now because it's a little bit thick, but make sure you don't lose the hole there. And once it's in, you just give it a good squeeze, and there you go. The heart one, you can turn it if it's turned. Sometimes they do that. There you go. So either one is for the binding straps. So when you're going to put the binding straps in. I'll show you with this one here. So you feed it through the bottom hole of the book, and then open the book, and get my sewing machine out of the way, that'll be easier. And then just feed it through the holes in the pages. There. And then back through the other hole in the binding. And loop it around itself again. And don't forget to singe the ends of that elastic because you don't want it to fray. So there is a completed book. You can also personalize it with the alphabet beads. I have a separate video showing that, how to do that. It's just tied with elastic there. And here's the book that we just completed. So pretty simple. Remember, you can get a complete ready to sew kit so you don't have to fart around with cutting pieces. But if you don't want to, if you like cutting the pieces, all of the pattern pieces are full scale on the back pages. So you can just print them out. It has all the templates, little notes, just for success. I've got lots and lots of pictures showing the different steps and process. I show this alternate snap method there. So my patterns are very detailed, include a lot of pictures, and are hopefully easy to read and understand and simple so that your sewing project is a lot of fun. Thanks for hanging in there. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully you're inspired to make your own quiet book. Check out other videos on my YouTube channel or on TinyFeats.com.